To the Vaishnav, O Vaishnav Goswami, please be merciful to me now. There is no one except you who can purify the fallen souls. What does anyone find? Where does anyone find such a merciful personality, by whose mere audience all sins go far away? After bathing in the waters of the sacred Ganges, many times one becomes purified, but just by the sight of you, the fallen souls are purified. This is your great power. The holy name delivers one who has committed an offense to Lord Hari. But if one commits an offense to you, there is no means of deliverance. Your heart is always the resting place of Lord Govinda. And Lord Govinda says, the Vaishnavas are in my heart. I desire the dust of your holy feet in every birth I may take. Please consider Narottam yours and be kind upon him. The only way to rectify an offense to a Vaishnav is by going to the Vaishnav and submitting oneself to the Vaishnava. There's no other means. Not by prayer, not by chanting, not by going to Krishna. One has to go to the devotee and beg forgiveness and pray for rectification. So, this is a very nice song. We'll start the service to the Vaishnavas in this case. Madanga. Who's on Madanga? Ebaro karuna koro Vaishnava Gosai Ebara karuna koro Vaishnava Gosai Patita Pavanatoma Pine Kehonai Patita Pavanatoma Pine Kehonai Jahara Nikote Kele Papudure Jai Jahara Nikate Kele Papadure Jai Emona Doyala Prabhu Keva Kotapai Emana Doyala Prabhu Keva Kotapai Gangara Parashoile Pashate Pavan Pashata Pavan Darshane Pavitra Koro Etomago Darshanene Pitra Koro Tomago Horistane Aparadhe Tade Harinam Haristane Aparadhe Tade Harinam Tomastane Aparadhe nahi paritra. Tomar hridoye sada Govinda Vishram. Govinda Kohinama Vaishnava Param. Pratijanme kori asha charanera dhuli pratijanme kori asha charanera dhuli Narotame korodoya apanaraboli. Narotame korodoya apanaraboli. Narotame korodoya apanaraboli. Ebaro Karuna Karo Vaishnava Gosai Ebaro Karuna Karo Putita Pavanatoma Ine Kehonai Tapa Vanatoma Ine Kehonai Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanandi, Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai, Vaishnava Seva Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvasesha Sunyavadi, Astachare Shatarine. Om Jnanatimirandasya Kalanjana Shalakaya Chakshuramitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakaramayam Tadati Svapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakama Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Upam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatha Itam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Padijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanto Radha Sute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sutedevi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyaevyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Tubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyaevyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna, welcome everybody this evening. And maybe we'll intersperse with a song and then some questions if you have any. And like that, we'll try to spend the next 1 hour. Krishna wills, and you will. You're welcome to ask a question. Something relevant to Krishna consciousness. Adhokshaja Prabhu.
It's just a general question about what you said is first time is for the person they have. And this is correct in all the duties we said on. And I wondered if that pastime happens every day. I was working hard and it's not been the longest living stay in the travel is one day.
Interesting question. Of course, it's not something to speculate on. It's not something which we would have to hear from realized souls. For sure, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Patita Pavana, as the deliverer of the fallen souls. One interesting thing in understanding of this, of how the living entities, whether they just remain one day of the life of Lord Brahma, maximum, you could say, in this universe, and then they're all delivered in one wholesale sweep. Vasudeva Datta appears, performs his pastimes, and Lord Chaitanya reciprocates. If you don't know this pastime, Vasudeva Datta is an expansion, or Prahlad is an expansion of Vasudeva Datta, whatever it is, whichever way we look at it. Vasudeva Datta represents that opulence of the Lord of absolute compassion for the living entities. Compassion is the most intimate characteristic or quality of the heart of the pure Vaishnava. Compassion is a very deep subject. It's not based just upon mundane, say, definition. It is the nature of the living entity in eternity. The compassion is entirely for, let's say, satisfying the heart of Krishna. The devotee always feels compassion for Krishna. Now, what does that mean? In other words, the devotee is always feeling how to increase the Lord's pleasure. Feeling the Lord, maybe because of my lack of devotion or my whatever, the Lord's pleasure could be more if more devotees were performing more service and bringing more pleasure to Krishna, or our service could be more pleasing. Whatever it is, the devotee always feels lacking like that. I just want to bring more pleasure to Krishna. That's their heart. So this mood of a Vaishnava, compassion, is the foundational root of all other interactions, qualities, etc. It's Radharani she's said to be the compassionate expansion of the Lord to expand Krishna's pleasure. And preaching in this world has the same root, although it may not be understood with the same perspective. We talk about delivering the fallen souls, but the root of it is to increase Krishna's pleasure, because we're always part and parcels. Obviously, Krishna wants all the living entities to wake up or return back to Godhead, whatever you want to call it. Reconnect. It's only a natural emotion everyone would feel If you lose that which belongs to you, in this case, it does belong to Krishna. In the material, it doesn't really belong to us. But when something is lost, which we think belongs to us, the greatest service you can do for that person is to reconnect whatever is lost with them. So it's reconnecting living entities with Godhead. So Vasudeva Datta, you could say, is the manifestation of that spirit, that mood. He was in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We read how he, many pastimes you could say maybe there, but predominantly this particular pastime which Adoshita Prabhu has mentioned, how Vasudeva Datta approached the Lord, requesting the Lord to please deliver all the living entities in the universe and let him stay here if necessary and suffer all the reactions of all the living entities, but just please release them from this material world and take them back to Godhead. It's quite astonishing. It's not just those who surrender unto me, but he was willing, even whoever they may be, just release them. Such a compassionate mentality is almost impossible to perceive or conceive of. So Lord Chaitanya said, it's not necessary, just by your will alone, I've delivered all the living entities back to Godhead. So how does that work? Is it once every day? Well, I can't say it's not, but I don't have a Shastric quote to say it definitely is. But from that pastime where Lord Chaitanya does appear once in day of Lord Brahma within this universe, that particular pastime, whether that pastime takes place in every Kali Yuga, I do not know. But this is the mood of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to deliver all the living entities back to Godhead. So one may say, well, what are we doing here then? If this is true, that this particular millennium, it is true. Vasudeva Datta appeared with this mission, with this mood. So why are we still here? Well, this is a unique feature of understanding the difference between the body and the soul. The body is a vehicle, just like if you sell your car to someone, the car is still there, you're not there, someone else is there. The same car hasn't changed. It's exactly the same car. There's nothing to say that we have the pastime of Lord Brahma trying to steal away the calves and the cowherd boys rather, in the pasturing grounds, trying to steal them away. And Krishna himself expands. Nobody could tell that anyone was gone, although he stole them, put them in caves, whatever. Krishna expanded himself in identical forms of calves and cowherd boys, to the extent that no one could even recognize any difference in their moods, their behavior, their forms. Everything about them was identical with their very boys themselves and the very cows themselves. Same form, same subtle and gross appeared the same, but in one sense, the living entity was different. In this case, it was Krishna expanding himself in each and every form. And of course, he manifested new forms as well, but they were identical. But in the material world, that a living entity is in this particular body, Krishna can deliver them on the spot if he wants. It doesn't have to be even at the end of the lifetime. And another living entity can immediately be appearing in that particular body with no one would know any difference has taken place. It's possible. Of course, if all living entities are changed, then of course nobody would know anyway. But this is possible. So nothing is impossible. Krishna can do anything. So I can't really answer that if this is an absolute fact that in every day of Lord Brahma. It's very interesting. But we do know that this is a very special. Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful form of Krishna, most magnanimous form of the Lord, and his followers in the same mood are, in one sense, even more magnanimous, at least in the case of Vasudeva Datta. Unlimited compassion for living entities. It's, by the way, another beautiful pastime. This is in the pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Shivananda Sain, a very close associate of Vasudeva Datta, actually. Shivananda Sain was more organized when it came to, let's say, managing things. So he would manage the party of devotees, including Vasudeva Datta, or hundreds and hundreds and thousands maybe, who would go every year to Puri to see Lord Chaitanya from Navadvip, from Bengal. So he was like the manager of that party, organizing the accommodation, prasadam, everything. Toll, if there's any tolls to pay, going through various crossings of rivers and so on and so forth. That Shivananda Singh was the best organizer. So, and he was also quite well to do. So he organized all these various journeys to Mayapur, to Jagannath Puri every year. And one time, one dog, a street dog, a wild street, ordinary street dog, joined the party and followed the party and didn't want to go anywhere else, just as if he was one of the devotees going to Puri. And Shivananda Sen accepted this dog as one of the party after a while. It was clearly obvious that this dog was intentions were the same, to go to Puri to get the darshan of Mahaprabhu. So the Shivananda Sen accepted him as just like everybody else. He would make sure he got fed, make sure he had somewhere to stay. Even they would come sometimes to rivers, and the boatman would say, "I'm not taking any dog." Shivananda Sen would bargain and pay a lot more for the dog to cross the river than the humans sometimes. And sometimes he'd, whatever it was, he'd always make sure the dog got what it needed. He was one of the pilgrims. He had to be looked after like everyone else. One time, Shivananda Sen was held up at a toll gate or some customs spot. He was held up. The party had to go forward. They went forward in the evening, and late in the evening, Shivananda Sen finally reached the party. But he looked all around, and he saw that the dog was not there. And he was making sure everyone got what they needed, food. He said, "Where's the dog?" Nobody knew. Then he asked, "Did everyone take prasadam?" Yes. Then he said, "Did you feed the dog?" They said, "Oh, no," because they forgot he wasn't there. So the dog had left. It wasn't fed. So the dog left the party. Shivananda Sen was very disturbed. He sent devotees out in every direction to look for that dog, but nobody could find the dog. Shivananda Sen then fasted for the rest of the journey because of the offense which he felt he committed to the dog. And so then they went on the journey on to Puri. Some days later, they arrived in Puri, and they went to take darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The dog was sat right next to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was personally feeding the dog. And the next day, it said that dog was seen no more. It went straight back to Godhead. So what's the moral of that? Prabhupada said that if you become a dog of a Vaishnava, it doesn't mean literally a dog, but it means like a faithful servant of a Vaishnava, then your path back to Godhead is guaranteed, just like that dog went back to Godhead. It wasn't chanting 16 rounds, maybe following the 4 regs or not, but it wasn't chanting 16 rounds. But it was, according to the tradition, it was a completely faithful, taking shelter of Shivananda Sen completely. And Shivananda Sen, by his mercy, that dog was delivered. And Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, just as the dog of Shivananda Sen went back to Godhead by the goodness of Shivananda Sen himself, similarly, if all of my disciples become pure devotees like Shivananda Sen, by their good wishes alone, all the living entities in the universe will go back to Godhead, even without their knowledge. So it's a very powerful thing, the mercy of the Vaishnava. We can't see it externally. We can't measure it externally. Nothing is impossible. We shouldn't take it for granted. That doesn't matter. That's going to happen anyway. I'll just hang around. One lifetime of Brahma is not too bad. You know, it could be worse. It's only 320 trillion years, but whatever. It's more or less eternity for living entity. And then on top of that, then one has to remain, of course, during that period of time, sometimes in the womb of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, whatever you want to call it, in the form, or in the form of Mahavishnu before the next universe comes out, another long period of dormant or sleep, etc. But you know, we're not here just to think like that. We're here to go back to God. Why? We want to quickly increase Krishna's pleasure. So whatever it may be, what position such personalities or such jivas take if they go back to God, we do not know. Whether there's no mood in their hearts necessarily, at least at that point, of a direct service to Krishna. It may be a neutral stage, who knows? But we're more interested in developing a personal positive, active relationship with the Lord, and not just depend upon just being let out of the prison by the king all of a sudden. All the prisoners are let out and still remaining a prisoner, or not remaining a prisoner, excuse me, but still remaining with a criminal mentality. We want to develop a devotional mentality for the pleasure of Krishna. And we know what pleases Krishna the most. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is encouraging everyone to please Krishna the most. And this Sankirtan movement is the means by which we can both become eligible and develop that attraction or that natural flow of devotion towards the Lord for His pleasure. But I don't know. That's a very interesting topic. Maybe it's explained somewhere more than that. I don't know. Good. Meditation, Vasudev Datta. Deliver all the living entities back to Godhead through the Sankirtan movement and by good wishes. We may not be so qualified. What can we do? We can't even deliver ourselves because we can't do that either, really. It's up to Krishna, but in the sense that we're not ourselves fixed in pure devotional service necessarily. But still, good wishes are manifested through going out and distributing Krishna consciousness to others. And to the devotees, charity begins at home, to the devotees in our community, being enthusiastically to encourage the devotees, being appreciative of devotees, trying to help serve the devotees. Service, don't offend the devotees. We were discussing earlier how to become stronger in Krishna consciousness, how to avoid falling down, etc. Well, the best way to fall down is to offend a devotee. Quickest and most, can say, sure way. So we try never to offend the Vaishnava. We may not agree, we may not understand, but we should never be sometimes it happens, we know. We should try to never be offensive towards the Vaishnavas, no matter who they are. We may have to externally deal with their external behavior, etc., but internally, never feel offensive towards the Vaishnava, no matter how small or, let's say, immature they may be. We're not so mature either. So try to always avoid offenses to the Vaishnavas. And that way we'll be. Hope is always there that we can awaken pure devotional service. Will awaken in our hearts. Sorry, I can't say much more. I don't know much more. But it's interesting meditation. Maybe we discuss it somewhere in a more advanced association that was more advanced than myself. Not difficult to find them. Any other questions? Yes.
So in the same vein about Shivananda saying going to Jagannath Puri, there was one time when Lord Nityananda got upset with him and cursed all his sons to die. So can you explain to us how that's compassion related?
Compassion is a unique feature, isn't it? It doesn't sound very compassionate. One time, when Shivananda Sain got held up again at one gate, one crossing, and not proper arrangements had been made for Nityananda. Nityananda was in the party that year. Must have been the year after he was told to go back to Bengal by Lord Chaitanya, because he was there before that. And he got quite upset with Shivananda's saying for not arranging proper prasadam or proper accommodation. And Lord Nityananda became, when Shivananda's saying finally came there, he became very angry. And Lord Nityananda, for his pure offense towards me, he kicked him in the chest. Boom. You ever been kicked in the chest? Ever been kicked in the chest? I've been kicked in the chest twice in my life. Once on a bus in Malaysia. That was an incredible experience. There was this really strange old lady in the seat in front of me. They have very big buses in Malaysia with big seats. They go back like beds, and you pay money to have this night bus, so you can put the seat back. She was behind me, not in front. And you're supposed to, everyone, the seat goes right back. It's like a bed. It's like amazing. They have fantastic buses. And so I was there. I was really tired in the seat, and she was behind me. It was a single seat. It was not double, single. And I wanted to put my seat back, but she stuffed all of her bags and boxes behind my seat. I couldn't move it an inch. Not an inch. It was like this all night long. And I asked her if she could, please move her bags a little bit so I could put. And then I tried to put it back a little bit, and she came with her right leg, and she kicked me in the chest with her right leg. She was really a strange creature. I never seen. She wasn't normal. She was really weird. I mean, I don't want to get into what type of weirdness, but she was really, really weird. Anyway, a lot of that stuff goes on in Malaysia. So I didn't pursue it any further because I knew that was just a warning of what could come next. So I didn't go over there. Another time I got kicked in the chest was in Sweden. In Sweden, we were traveling with Parashuram Prabhu in Sweden, doing Rath Yatras from town to town. We just went. It was near a place called what's the second city of Sweden called after Stockholm? You've got Malmo, Norrköping. This one, Gothenburg. I think it's Gothenburg, right? Second city of Sweden, Gothenburg. We were parked just outside of Gothenburg in by some lake there, and some kind of camping area. When we parked there for the night, we had this van. We had several vehicles. One big kind of van with some bunks inside it. So I was sleeping in there. Mahavishnu Swami was sleeping in there. And I think it was just the two of us sleeping in there, and others were sleeping in other things, in tents and this and that, other vehicles. About 20 or 30 of us traveling. And then in the middle of the night, I had to get up to go to the toilet, pass water. So I went out, opened the door quietly as I could, not to wake Mahavishnu Swami. And I came back as quietly as I could. I opened the door. It was very dark. I had a little torch. It was very dark. And suddenly, Mahavishnu Swami, he didn't kick me. It wasn't a kick. I got it wrong, but it was a hit. He got up in the middle of the night. And he did got up because I came back in. He suddenly sprang out of his bed and flew towards me. And it wasn't a kick. It was a punch. And boom, he hammered me in the chest like this. I flew backwards. Oh, full swing. He full on bang. Then he woke up. It was a spontaneous thing in his sleep. And apparently when he was a child, he had something. And it was something to do with that. But he was very careful sleeping in the same room with Mahavishnu Swami ever since then. He tells his story over and over again, so it's not, don't get him, it's not embarrassing him. He tells everywhere he goes. Whenever I'm with him, he tells everyone in the audience this story. Quite an extraordinary experience. It took me 5 or 6 days to recover. I missed the next 2 Rath Yatras. And it didn't break anything, but it was like bruising, and I kept struggling to move, and I couldn't move properly. Well, you got to be careful when you're around Mahavishnu Swami. He packs quite a heavy punch, I tell you. Lucky I got strong bones. Anyway, that's kind of off the mark, really. But I mean, this kick in the chest, Shivananda saying, and then he cursed him. I curse your 3 sons to die. Of course, Shivananda Sain's wife was there. She started crying and crying, obviously. No! Because everyone knew Nityananda is not like an ordinary person. This is not an ordinary pastime, by the way. A very intimate pastime. And then Shivananda Sain said, this is the least, and let my 3 sons die for the offense that I've committed to Lord Nityananda. So how is this related to compassion? What would you say? How is it related to compassion? Depending on what you see as compassion. Depends how we define compassion. We define it internally or externally. If we define it externally, you would say this is not really much of a sign of compassion, is it? For instance, if you go on the street and distribute books and someone says no, and you just punch them on the face, beat them to the ground and start kicking them, well, you might say it's compassion, but it's not normally seen as compassion. Just because he didn't take a book. Can you imagine if the devotees did that every time they went out? We wouldn't last very long, of course, but it's hardly the mood of a Vaishnava normally. So what's going on here? that Shivananda saying did everything he could. Somehow he didn't expect to get held up. He just somehow trying his best, and he ends up being kicked in the chest with his 3 sons being cursed to die by Lord Nityananda. So what's going on here? Is there anything more to it, or is it just something to laugh at? Pardon? There is always more to it. We may not be able to see. These two pastimes have many layers of understanding according to one's advancement or according to one's situation. Called adhikar, one's eligibility. So different, seen in different ways. Of course, the sons didn't die. In one sense, it could be seen as a test. Lord Nityananda testing Shivananda, saying he didn't get angry in the least. You see, a devotee on his own behalf, you could say for his sons, but still it's like his own self, did not become angry when he was chastised like this, but rather accepted it. So that's one aspect, is his humility or his tolerance, etc. And that's one thing. He didn't become angry, which we normally flare up when such a thing like this goes on or counter-curse. There are many examples of this in the Vedas, in the pastimes of the Lord, and in Chaitanya Charitamrita, pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, of the behavior of a pure devotee where he just accepts the Lord's chastisement as the greatest mercy. And mercy is of course, compassion or inseparable. So there's mercy. From the material point of view, you can say one's becoming purified. The curse of Lord Nityananda is the greatest blessing one can receive. You could say there are many times devotees appear to curse, but their curse is simply for the deliverance of the cursed, to help free them from whatever situation or show others by the example of behavior. Another thing is that one should be very careful about offending the spiritual master. Lord Nityananda is Adi Guru, the original spiritual master. So you have to be very, very careful not to offend the representative of Lord Nityananda, the spiritual master. Lord Nityananda is the original spiritual master. So in this way, one has to be very, very careful. Lord Chaitanya and his associates, at least Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, would teach extremities. And it's not that would be necessarily applied to such an extreme case, but they would teach just like Lord Chaitanya taught through Haridas Jr., not Haridas Thakur. But one other associate of Lord Chaitanya was known as Haridas too, Haridas Jr. What did he teach through him? And this is like something with this modern age we live in, which is like probably wouldn't go down very easily. But what did he teach him?
We have to be strict in the sannyas ashram and no interaction with the females.
Yeah, for those in the sannyas ashram, Lord Chaitanya had no end of female followers, and he loved his grihastha disciples. He encouraged them in every way to have children. Very fine, first class, sweet, tasty rice. Lord Chaitanya loves rice. And Bengalis, all Aryans, more or less everyone in India loves rice, more or less. Maybe not in Punjab, but everywhere they love rice. And this rice was so good, Lord Chaitanya said, where on earth did you get such fine rice? Then he found out that actually Haridas Jr. had gone to the house of Madhavi Devi. She was a wife of Sikhi Mahiti, another great devotee. And she was also one of the topmost devotees. She was one considered. Lord Chaitanya had, just a few most confidential associates. She was amongst those considered like that. She was really an advanced soul, to say the least. So he went to her house and he begged this rice to prepare this for Lord Chaitanya. And when Lord Chaitanya heard that, he was very upset. That you are in the sannyas order of life, and you have alone, because there was no one else around apparently, and you have gone and associated with a woman. There was no lust on his mind, practically speaking, maybe a fraction of thought of a woman, but no lust practically. But Lord Chaitanya was teaching this strictness of the sannyas order. So, and through different devotees, he was teaching different lessons, you could say. Tolerance, respect, in this case, proper behavior, etiquettes, etc., etc. More or less all of his devotees, he had various lessons to teach to them for the public, for the people, for the devotees in general. So with Shivananda saying, I don't know what more you can say. Maybe there's more written there in the purport I can't remember, with his being kicked in the chest. And this wonderful example of his response is in many ways, it's not so much the incident, it's how we respond to it. That is the measuring rod of our devotion in many ways, rather than, we may make mistakes, all of us make mistakes, no doubt, but it's how we respond. We try to defend them, we try to attack the other person or whatever it may be, deny, defend, attack. These are not the natures of a Vaishnava's heart. He sees that the Lord's acting in such a way, this is the compassion side, he's acting in such a way as to purify me, to deliver me from whatever offense I may have committed, and to help others to also benefit from this situation. But this has to be understood, but of course, otherwise it would be easily misunderstood. How is the activity of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra compassionate? You could say that perhaps even more vivid in people's minds is situations like that where he's fighting and killing. How is this an act of compassion? Arjuna didn't think it was an act of compassion. He thought it was incompassionate to fight. One of his arguments was based on this mundane compassion. So without understanding of what spiritual compassion is, pastimes like this remain either totally bewildering or contrary to our understanding. We may reject them or reject the whole basis of the teaching based on these type of external measures. But they're not, they're internal. One has to at least understand the internal aspect. Otherwise it becomes just, as some personalities comment on the Gita, for instance, they just take it to mean like an allegorical event, which just represents the mind and the senses, 5 senses, the 5 Pandavas, and this, that, and the other. And the Battle of Kurukshetra never existed, and they have all these concoctions. It just basically represents the material world and the forces of good and evil. That's how people sometimes, and that's the beginning, middle, and end of the whole pastime. It's just that we learn to behave by supporting goodness and reject evil, or something like that, and controlling our senses so we don't become too sinful in behavior. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is way beyond that. The purpose is to surrender to Krishna, to act exactly according to the will of Krishna, pleasure of Krishna. So one should be prepared. Another thing, you can't measure the Lord. You can't measure a pure devotee. Not that they're meant to be. They're not under our control. We're being tested. That anything can happen in every situation, just like we find ourselves sometimes in unpleasant situations, and so on and so forth. Or any situation, maybe alone sometimes. Whatever it is, different situations the Lord may place us in to test us, so we take shelter of Him and not external energy or air conditional natures, etc. But learning to take shelter of Him in every situation and being thankful to take shelter of the Lord even in difficult situations, and not to try to analyze or whatever it may be. I don't want to add anything to that pastime of Shivananda's saying, and how is this related to compassion? It's to release us from the mundane perspective of compassion. Otherwise we remain in the modes of nature, and just don't understand the difference between the soul and the body and what is our spiritual nature, etc. Anything else? Adosh?
Just to add something onto that, there's a point that comes up in the Anshalila, chapter 7168, and in that it says Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was actually always merciful. This is in relation to Chaitanya within his heart, but he was sometimes externally negligent of devotees. We should not be preoccupied with this external feature, however, for if we do so, we shall be vanquished.
That's a pretty heavy warning. If we see it externally, as if this is some kind of mundane thing or crazy fanaticism or something. Madhavi, by the way, was an elderly lady, and Junior Haridas was very, very chaste, very, strict, and he was only thinking of the Lord's pleasure. The point is, the devotee is always thinking of the Lord's pleasure, and this is the underlying thing. If this pleases Lord Nityananda, then this is the best thing that could ever happen. And he kicked me and cursed my sons. Somehow or another, the whole Srivas Thakur had the same mood when his own son passed away in the middle of the kirtan. They were only thinking of the pleasure of Lord Chaitanya. So Haridas was actually only thinking of Lord Chaitanya's pleasure, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a purpose to teach, to show. And because he was a completely surrendered, just like Arjuna was a completely, fully realized, self-realized soul, he voluntarily placed himself into a position of bewilderment so that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, but he was otherwise fully realized soul. We're not, but they are. So they teach, and the Lord teaches through his devotees. And of course, later on, Chota Haridas showed what to do if a sannyasi falls from his vows. Traditionally, although Prabhupada said that's not appropriate for this day and age, but he showed how serious the point is. So to warn and to protect those in that order of life. And then when we were preaching, as in this mission, that's a different thing, of course, but the mentality of seeing the opposite sex as a source of pleasure is, for a sannyasi, is like considered to be like vomiting and then eating one's own vomit. To see the other person as an object of sense gratification. They're not belonging to us, they belong to Krishna and should be engaged for the service of pleasure of Krishna, his compassion. So with Haridas Jr., of course, he did show, and traditionally in India at least, the atonement for that is one leaves one's body at Triveni. He went to Triveni, Haridas Jr. went to Triveni, which is a river where the Ganges and Jamuna and the Saraswati meet, a place called Prayag in India. And he left his body there in the river. He drowned, you could say, in the river there, which was the proper atonement, but Prabhupada did not at all encourage this imitation of such a situation, but rather to rectify through other means, or to be honest and change one's ashram, become a grihasta. But Haridas Thakur was then always, he was a very good singer, and all the devotees were very much, were stunned by the way Lord Chaitanya behaved with them. They all loved him, and they couldn't see there was much of an offense. But Lord Chaitanya was resolute, and but Haridas was back in Puri in no time, in a subtle body, unseen physically, but he was singing to the Lord all the time, constantly chanting and singing to the Lord, pleasing the Lord. In a subtle, the devotees could hear him singing; they couldn't see him. So the soul is not this body. The only problem we got is we think we're the body, in one sense, in understanding many of these things. We're so attached to the body and the bodily, how things go in this material world, comparing everything to mundane things, All the problems are based on this. Racial problems, religious problems, gender problems, national problems, everything, health problems, because the body is going to get sick, but because if people identify with it, they suffer. All but due to this they talk about reincarnation, but that's a secondary question. If you understand the soul is eternal, what the heck do you think the soul is going to do after the body dies? If the soul's eternal, what's it going to do? Obviously, it's going to carry on. So what, we're going to remain a ghost forevermore or what? No. Maybe for some time. They say heaven or hell. What does that mean? Okay, you could say in a subtle form you're experiencing hell or heaven, but still you're existing. And it's another form of body. The subtle body is also a body. But you can't usually work with the subtle body the same way you can with the gross body. It doesn't have the capacity to enact the thoughts and desires which are there. It may experience some pains and sufferings and so on and so forth, but it cannot have that form to actually enact out one's desires. You need a gross body in the material world for that, generally speaking. And this one's on a very a very elevated platform where the form is of a different nature, but in this plane, at least, one needs ghost body. But because of misunderstanding of the nature of the self, all these, it's not possible to understand these things properly from a material perspective. They're internal interactions with the Lord and his pure devotees. That's why Lord Chaitanya left Navadvip. What a thing to do. Why? Oh, you can say to spread the holy name all over the world, so everyone will respect him as a sannyasi and so on, fine. That's there, but there's an internal aspect too, to these pastimes. Internally, what was the reaction? What was the result of his leaving Navadvip? What happened? All the devotees in Navadvip are crying and devastated. What else did it do? The Lord's leaving, or the Lord's leaving Vrindavan. They go to Mathura. What does it do? Materially, it seems insane. It seems like cruel. What compassion is there? Okay, may say for the people in general, well, what about his mother? Had no husband. He was the only son. Left at home, that is. And all the devotees, life and soul with Lord Chaitanya, and he just gets up and walks out. Didn't even tell him practically. Is that compassion? Not in the eyes of most people. But why is it compassion? Prabhupada.
Because it allows the devotee to experience a higher level of connection with the Lord through Vipralamba Seva,
Thank
or
you.
service and separation.
Thank you. So internally, it's immersed all of his devotees in the deepest form of loving exchange, which is known as Vipralamba, at least from our perspective. Separation from the Lord, and the intensity of their love and devotion and attachment increases unendingly. And so does his for them. And it's like they're never separated in reality, although it's a different mood, you could say. But it's much more intense and much more ecstatic, although it seems like painful. It's everything spiritually, relationships are full of bliss. So this is an even deeper form of ecstatic devotion. And from a lesson point of view, of course, eventually we're all going to have to bear separation from each other, separation from this, that, the other, and just getting help to realize that doesn't mean that's the end of the world, or it appears to be. When this is the time now, we really have to take shelter. So show different things depending on who it is, and externally, of course, compassion to deliver all the living entities by preaching Krishna consciousness wide and far and near, not just in the homeland, so to speak. So compassion in different ways. That's what the time is. 6:15. These are deep questions. At least for us, when you're only this tall, when you're only that high, even a drop of water is very deep, right? You can drown in a little tiny ant, a little tiny drop of water out of your cup. If an ant gets caught in that, it can drown. Elephant won't even notice it. So we're like little ants, so little things like this are big, huge, beyond our swimming capacity. Let's sing one more song. We only sang one. Okay. Ashish is he here? Here he is. Okay. I held this up. So for you, Prabhu, we're going to sing Goranga Bolite Habe. Not for you, but, because you mentioned it earlier on. I don't know what page. Wait till it's on the line. I may have to go back. This is up, down, back. The first line is a bit like a chorus. Arakame. Aranaibe. Hare 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 Tena Yare Hare Ishaya Chaya Kabe Shoulda have mana Kabe Hama Heraba Shri Vrindavana Ishaya Chariya Kabe Ave Ma Kabe Hama Herabo Shri Vrindavana Goranga Polite Habe Pulaka Sharira Hare Hare Polite Nai Jane Bhavinira Oranga Polite Ave Pulaka Sharira Hare Vaitenayane Bhavini Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haibe Akuti Kabehama Bujabose Jugala Piriti Runatapade Hoibe Akuti Kabehama Bujabose Jugala Piriti Goranga Polite Kabe Pulaka Sharira Hari Hari Polite Nai Yane Vaveniro Goranga volite have Pulaka Sharira Hare Hare volite nai Yane Babinira Rupa Raghunatha Pade Rahamorasha Pratana Kara Yesada Narotamada Raghunatha Pade Amara Asha Pratana Kroye Sada Naro Tamadasa Goranga Polite Habe Pulaka Sharira Hare Hare Polite Hai Yare Bhave Hiro Ranga Hare Rama Hare Hare Bolite Nai Hare Goranga Bolite Habe Pulaka Sharira Hare Hare Bolite Nai Yane Abeniro Anga Bolite Habe Pulaka Sharira Hare Hare Bolite Nai Yaneba Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 I have to go down a little bit Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Just listen for a little bit. You're not quite in the same chord or note, whatever you call it. Hare Krishna, I'll change slightly because I try to get the right line. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna I'll go down a little bit to help you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanandi, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Jai Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai. Merciful Lord Chaitanya. So I've got to go out now. Someone else to lead Gaur Arti.
Kibojayo Jaya Gorachande Aroti Koshoba Gorachande Aroti Koshoba Janavi Bamigadadhara Nikate Advaita Shrini Vasachitradara Nikate Advaita Shrini Vasachitradara Osiache Gauracha Ratna Simhasane. Bosiache Gaurachan Ratna Simhasane. Aroti Koren Brahma Adi Devagane. Aroti Koren Brahma Adi Devagane. Narahari Adikori Chamaradulaya. Narahari Adikori Chamaradulaya. Sanjaya Mukunda Vashu Goshadigaya. Sanjaya Mukunda Vashu Goshadigaya. Shankar Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Bhaje Karatala. Shankar Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Bhaje Karatala. Madhuramridanga Bhaje Paramarasala. Madhuramridanga Bhaje Paramarasala. Shanka Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Madhur 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 Bhaje. Shanka Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Madhur 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 Bhaje. Shanka Bhaje Ganta Bhaje Madur 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 Bhaje Madur 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 Bhaje Madur 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 Bhaje Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Bahu Koti Chandrajini Vadana Ujvala Bahu Koti Chandrajini Vadana Ujvala Gala Deshe Banamala Kore Jalamala Gala Deshe Banamala Kore Jalamala Shiva Shuka Narada Preme Gada Gada Shiva Shuka Narada Preme Gada Gada Baka teve noda deke Gaura Rasampada Baka teve noda deke Gaura Rasampada Shibo Jayo Jaya Gaura Chande Aroti Koshoba Janavi Tatavani Jagamana Loba Gauranger Arotik Shoba Jagajana Manaloba Gauranger Arotik Shoba Jagajana Manaloba Gaurangera Rotik Shoba Jagajana Manaloba Jagajana Manaloba Jagajana Manaloba Jagajana Manaloba Jagajana Manaloba Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora, Haribol, Nitai Gor, Nitai Gor. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Prabhupada. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Prabhupada. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gauranga Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gauranga Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gauranga. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai Maya Poshashi. Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai Maya Poshashi. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur. Jaya Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajya Kacharya, Ashtatarashata, Shishimada, Bhacharanaravinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada Ki Jai, BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Guru Parampara Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Shri Rupa, Shri Sanatan, Bhata Raghunath, Shri Jiva, Gopala Bhata, Dasa Raghunath, Shri Shad Goswamis, Prabhupada Ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद श्री गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय श्री मायापुर धाम की जय श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय श्री तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय श्री हरिनाम प्रभु की जय श्री संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution की जय श्री श्री कौदनिताय माया पुरुषाशी की जय श्री तुलसीनाथ महाराज की जय श्री गिरिधर लाल की जय श्री निशिंगदेव भगवान की जय श्रीमती वृंद देवी की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Namaste Narasingaya. Praladaladaine. Sranyakashipurvaksha. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito nisingo parato nisingo. Yato yato yamitato nisingo. Bahir nisingo ritae nisingo. Narasingamadim sharanam prapade. Tava kara kamalavare nakam adbhuta shringa. Dalita hiranyakashipu tanubringa. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Hare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagatisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Nisingadev, 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 Jaya Nisingadev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Shri Nrsimhadev Bhagwan ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.